Well, the old Robo HIppy back at you here again, and just like the title says, bandsaw dust ports do not suck. I have a problem with that, and you don't have to turn as many bowls as I do to have the exact same problem, and that problem is when I first got this little bandsaw here, it had a little 2-inch dust port right down here. Of course, that didn't get any dust. I took it off, put in a 4-inch dust port on there, or basically my hose, 1 horsepower dust collector. That still didn't work. Put this one on the door of my cabinet here, 5-inch port, and I have a 3 horsepower industrial type dust collector, and it works better, but still leaves the inside of the bandsaw looking like that. Now if you look here, you can see it's getting some of the dust up, so which means that instead of filling all the way up, it's only filling up about that high. Now I got my big bandsaw here, and when I got it, I ran into the exact same problems. The dust ports on this thing do not suck. And that same problem here looks like that. This made me think about the old Star Trek adventure, The Trouble with Tribbles. This is where the dust port was originally on this saw. It had a 4-inch port with crosshairs in it. Crosshairs just so nobody sticks their hand up there when it's running, which hopefully nobody's dumb enough to do that. First thing I did was cut the crosshairs out. That didn't do anything at all. Next thing I did was cut the plastic housing out, put a 5-inch dust port on there. It still didn't do anything at all. One of the reasons it doesn't. So this is the inside of the saw. This is where that dust port is. And kind of in dust collection systems 101, also in hydraulic lines, the dust has to come down, make a 90-degree turn to go into the outlet there. It does not flow well around corners. Now, after trying to figure this out for a couple of years and pondering this, I finally figured it out with the way the dust ports are situated on just about every bandsaw I've ever seen. They made these for the cabinet shops where all you ever cut are 6% kiln-dried lumber, and the dust is very fine, so it doesn't make any difference where it comes in from. It's going to get sucked up. And if you're cutting wet wood like we do, if you're making bowls, it's heavy, it's going to go down the bottom and sit. So how do you fix that? Number one thing I did on this saw is there we go. All the dust always ended up settling down at the bottom. So I made an angled chute, cut a hole in the door. I have some magnets in the top here so I can pull it off and on when I want to or when I need to get in and clean it out. Goes in place like that. And this one has to be removable because I can't open the door all the way with this on here as is. And if I pull it open, so that's as far as it opens, which is okay for some things, but if I want to open it farther, I have to be able to remove that little dust port there. So, how well does the vent work when you put it down where the sawdust actually falls? Pretty well. So I ripped up these blanks, some wet sycamore. I am cutting end grain, so you're going to tend to get long shavings. And when I open up the doors, I don't have nearly as much trouble with tribbles. So that's what's left on the inside after cutting all those blanks. You always get a little bit in the bottom. So I do still get a few little strings coming up around the top part. I don't think you can totally prevent that. Mostly because the bandsaw blade pulls things all the way around, but you don't get nearly the mess down here that you do if you're just using the vent, which is on the back side there. This stack here is all the stuff that I cut up on my little bandsaw, just to show you how well that dust collecting vent works in it. So this is the inside after cutting up all those blanks there. Still get a little bit down here in the corner, nothing in the door hardly, except a little bit in the corner. And then up on top, Still got a little bit around the inside, but not nearly as much as there was. So again, the vent is down where most of the sawdust is falling, so it's going to pick up almost all of it. So in order to get this vent in, I was not able to pull the door off. The screws that hold it on have been in there for 25 years, and I figure they're rusted in place and are never going to come out. They used a jigsaw, cut the rectangle like that, took the old dust vent off, covered it with some of this. It's a foil tape, generally used for sealing up your duct work when you put in your dust collection system. So this is a hand fabricated vent, very similar to the one on the big bandsaw. And of course, after I got done making it, I found out that they are actually available through Oneida Tools. I will provide a link at the bottom of the video for that. It is easier to buy them than it is to make them from scratch. So a vent like this will basically pull almost all the dust out of the bandsaw when you're cutting. So if you do put a vent in the bottom of your door like this, basically that's where all the dust is going to fall, gravity. This will do a much better job of pulling all the sawdust out of the inside of your bandsaw while you're cutting. So if you want to fabricate your own basically hood or flange for going on your bandsaw door, if you want to do it out of PVC, this is one method for doing it. You need to make square cuts, so this is going to be where I'm going to cut off the end. This will be basically where I make my angled cut down the side. In order to get a square line here, this trick is older than me. You want something that's straight and flexible. Wrap it around, and when your straight edges match, that's pretty darn close to square. Another flexible thing with straight edge on, if you got sandpaper rolls like this, you can do the same thing. Run it around, wiggle it up and down until the two edges match. And that's going to be a pretty much square cut. Now, to make the end cut, these can be done on like a chop saw if you've got one that cuts high enough. I don't like that. It's kind of dangerous. They can grab, these things can shatter. So I resort to the original cordless power saw. Clamping this against the old table saw fence works nicely. Original cordless power saw is pretty easy to cut. Use a rip saw rather than a cross cut because that cuts a little bit better. So this line, basically dust hose is going to go on up to here. And then this line, basically I want a flat surface from here to here. And that's going to go up against your bandsaw, whatever flat surface you have to hook this dust collector up to. So the way I get my line, I want to go from pretty much flush here to flush on this end. I figure this is about a center line. And I'll take the cordless handsaw again, power saw. I scribe a line in it like this. You can cut the whole thing down with a handsaw, that works. Or if you want to cheat, I use a jigsaw. Kind of a rough cutting blade on there. I'll keep it at a slow speed. And as I go across, I want to try to keep the thing pretty much perpendicular like this. And this line on top that I've used my handsaw to make, that basically gives me a line to shoot to. And then just cut and keep it on a slow speed. Close, good enough for a dust collection port. To get the other side, pretty much the same thing. First thing I do is make another mark here, so basically that's going to be the flat side. And I can transfer that mark over to the outside. I'll reverse this because it's a little easier to cut this way. Then take this arrow, leave it at about 3 o'clock, make the same cut. One little cut across there and I'm done with it. And if you've got a big belt sander, you can sand that down perfectly flat. This can have plywood around it, so you've got something to screw into your door. Or you can use lots of silicone caulking or hot melt glue to seal it. So this is the vent I got from Oneida. For me, for using this on a bandsaw, I'd basically cut these down, flare them out. This one's better for the smaller saws. And I've got to get back to them and see if they've got one for the bigger saws, like the one that's on the back of my sanding hood.